These JDM legends weren't tuner specials or mainstream icons. These were purpose-built machines that flew under the radar, built for real speed, with pedigrees most people never knew existed. From obscure K-rockets to forgotten homologation beasts, these are the 15 unknown Japanese race cars that were street legal. Number 15, 1988 Honda Civic EF18B. The 1988 Civic EF isn't rare, but the right trim with the right engine tells a totally different story. When Honda dropped the EF hatch with the 1.8-liter B18 swap, it created a street-legal race toy that was light, nimble, and ready to rev to the moon. Technically, Honda never sold the 18B variant stock in the Civic, but enthusiasts in Japan and beyond quickly figured out how to pair the EF chassis with Integra power. What you got was a 950-kilogram pocket rocket. The EF chassis was already sharp. Double wishbone suspension, excellent weight balance, and room to play. Add the 1.8-liter DOHC VTEC engine, and suddenly it could rev past 8,000 RPM while keeping pace with cars twice its price. It wasn't just quick, it was precise. The steering was telepathic. The feedback from every input made it feel like a race car for the people. This was a car you could drive to work, take to the track, and smoke bigger, heavier rivals. No turbo, no drama, just raw, high-revving joy. And if the Civic proved that lightness was king, Toyota answered back with something heavier, angrier, and born to conquer rally stages. The next entry brought AWD, boost, and battle-tested hardware. Number 14, 1971 Toyota 1600 GTR T55. The 1971 Toyota 1600 GT was a rare sight, even back in its day. Built off the Corona coupe platform, it looked elegant at first glance. But under the skin, it was itching for a street brawl. Toyota dropped in the twin-cam 2TG engine, a real high-revving marvel for the time. It made about 110 horsepower, which doesn't sound wild until you consider how featherlight the car was. Rev it past 7,000 RPM, and it came alive. This wasn't some fancy showpiece with soft suspension and leather seats. It had a 5-speed manual, stiff underpinnings, and a front-engine rear-wheel drive layout that made it a dream in tight corners. The 1600 GT handled like it was reading your mind. Tight steering, great balance, and an eagerness to keep pulling through corners. It didn't need turbochargers or massive displacement. It needed heart, and that little 2TG had plenty of it. Aesthetically, it wore its performance lightly. Sure, there were sportier touches, mag wheels, GT badging, and a fastback profile, but it never tried too hard. That's part of its charm. Most people expected it to drive like a Corona. They were wrong. The 1600 GT was built for backroads, twos runs, and occasional track days. And for the lucky few who owned one, it offered the full Japanese Grand Touring experience in miniature form. Just as the 1600 GT sharpened Toyota's sporting edge, another Yoda was being reimagined, not in the factory, but in a workshop. Someone decided to take a tiny, lovable coupe and kit it out for race duty. That's where the Sports 800 GTR replica comes in. Number 13, 1972, Toyota Sports 800 GTR replica. At first glance, the Toyota Sports 800 looks like it belongs in a cartoon. It's cute, it's round, and it weighs just 580 kilograms. But someone saw more in it. In 1972, race-modified versions of the Sports 800 started showing up, equipped with GTR-style kits that gave this featherweight fighter real menace. What was once a gentle weekend cruiser suddenly looked and drove like a track weapon. The original flat-2 engine made around 45 horsepower, but with race-spec carbs, high-compression pistons, and less weight thanks to stripped interiors, these replicas could surprise much larger cars on twisty circuits. Some builders even dropped in tuned 4-cylinder motors from the Corolla or Celica range, giving the tiny coupe proper bite. The wide fender flares, deep dish wheels, and roll cage didn't just look good. They hinted that this car meant business. But here's the best part. It never lost its charm. Even when kitted out for competition, the Sports 800 kept its roots as a lovable oddball. It was nimble, communicative, and felt like a glove once you sat behind the wheel. And because it was so light, it didn't need massive horsepower to fly. Power to weight was the name of the game, and the Sports 800 played it masterfully. Once that little Toyota had made its mark as a track day outlaw, Nissan had a response of its own. Something that looked like a school project but punched far above its spec sheet. Enter the Sunny GX. Number 12. 1972, Nissan Sunny Excellent Coupe 1400 GX, B210 GX5. Nissan's Sunny lineup is usually seen as bare-bones transport, but the Excellent Coupe 1400 GX flipped the script. This was Nissan's attempt to make a sporty, lightweight coupe that didn't break the bank, and they nailed it. Under the hood was the A14 engine, a gutsy little four-cylinder with twin carbs in GX trim, and it was mated to a 5-speed manual transmission. Add rear-wheel drive, and you had the ingredients for a street-legal riot. The Sunny GX wasn't just quick, it was clever. The suspension was tuned for better road feel, and the body was light enough to make full use of the engine's output. Nissan also tightened the ratios on the gearbox, so you could keep the revs in the sweet spot through corners. And while it didn't have the flair of a Skyline or the cult rep of a Z car, it earned respect from anyone who actually drove one. Visually, it stayed low-key. The coupe roofline was sleek, and the GX badge hinted at something special, but there were no wild wings or massive scoops. That's what made it dangerous. Other drivers never saw it coming. Once you heard the carbs open up and felt it squat into a bend, though, you knew this wasn't just some economy car with a shiny badge. By the time the GX5 trim rolled out, the Sunny had cemented itself as one of the best-kept secrets in JDM history. And as Nissan quietly refined their compact street racers, another unlikely Nissan name was preparing a wildcard entry that felt part rally, part outlaw, and all attitude. Number 11, 1973 Nissan Skyline GTR, Kenmeri KPGC 110. By the time 1973 rolled around, the GTR badge already meant something special. But the Kenmeri GTR, officially known as the KPGC 110, was a different beast, and one that never got the spotlight it deserved. It was the final GTR of the first era, and the only one to wear the famously sleek Kenmeri body style. Nissan only made 197 of them, thanks to the oil crisis and looming emissions regulations, but every single one was a race-bred machine. Under the hood sat the legendary S20 engine, a 2.0-liter inline-six with dual overhead cams and triple carbs. It made 160 horsepower and revved freely up to 7,000 RPM. This wasn't a dressed-up cruiser. It was a proper touring car platform in street clothing. Paired with a 5-speed manual and independent rear suspension, it was built to dominate racetracks. And it almost did before regulation changes ended its motorsport ambitions. What sets the Kenmeri apart isn't just its rarity, though that certainly helps. It's the balance of style and substance. That long hood, short deck, and ducktail spoiler gave it a presence few Japanese cars could match in the era. And inside, it had just enough comfort to remind you it was still a street car. But floor the throttle, and it transformed into a different animal. Collectors go nuts over these now, but back then, it came and went without the glory it earned. It never got to race officially under the GTR banner, and that added to its myth. The Kenmeri was the end of the original GTR line, and one of the most elegant performance coupes Japan ever made. And if rare GTRs like that still leave you curious, don't worry, we're just warming up. Stick around, drop a like if you're enjoying this, and let's move into something even more unexpected. As Nissan's hero faded into the background, Isuzu was quietly ready to make one last statement of their own, with a car that brought Italian flair and serious edge to Japan's growing racing scene. Number 10, 1974 Isuzu Bellet GT Type R. If there's a car that feels like it came out of nowhere and left a massive dent in JDM history, it's the Isuzu Bellet GT Type R. Introduced in the mid-60s but still going strong into the early 70s, this was Japan's first car to ever wear a Type R badge, decades before Honda made it cool. And the 1974 version was the last of its kind, refined and potent, with real motorsport DNA. The Bellet GTR came powered by the G161W, a twin-cam 1.6-liter four-cylinder that made around 120 horsepower. It might not sound like much today, but back then, it was a firecracker. Rev-happy, sharp, and paired with a close-ratio 5-speed manual, the Bellet GTR was ready for hill climbs, rallies, and track battles. Isuzu didn't just make a fast car, they made a race car you could drive home. The suspension setup was pure sports car, independent front and rear with double wishbones and coil springs. Handling was tight, direct, and way ahead of its time. Add in front disc brakes and lightweight construction, and the Bellet didn't just keep up, it outpaced plenty of its rivals. And that boxy fastback design? It wasn't flashy, but it was purposeful. It said, "I'm here to win." Very few people outside Japan even knew this car existed back then. It never made a splash internationally, and even inside Japan, it was a niche choice. But among racers and collectors today, it's revered. This was a Japanese car that didn't try to mimic anyone else. It had its own identity, its own edge. And while Isuzu went bold with a twin-cam screamer, Mazda was about to throw the rulebook out entirely, with a rotary rocket dressed in a muscle car's skin. Number 9, 1978 Mazda RX-3 SP Street Performance Edition. When Mazda dropped the RX-3 SP in 1978, it wasn't aiming for subtle. This was a loud, brash send-off for one of the most underrated rotary platforms in their lineup. The SP stood for Street Performance, and it was designed to cash in on the muscle car craze while still offering Mazda's signature rotary madness. The RX-3 was already a strong performer thanks to its 12A rotary engine. The SP package didn't bump power massively, it still made around 110 horsepower. But the lightweight chassis meant it could dance around corners and rev like crazy. It was the feel that mattered. A buzzy, agile coupe with sharp throttle response and almost no nose weight to bog it down. It loved high RPMs, and drivers who knew how to keep it in the power band were rewarded. What made the SP edition special was the attitude. It came with bold striping, blackout trim, louvers, and sport wheels. It looked like it meant business, and it delivered. RWD quick steering and a balanced chassis made it a blast to drive, and the rotary soundtrack gave it a character you couldn't find anywhere else. Today, the RX-3 SP is a cult favorite, especially among rotary fans. It's rare, often modded, and hard to find in clean condition. But if you get behind the wheel of one, you'll understand why it mattered. Mazda wasn't just building quirky cars, they were creating a unique driving experience. Just when people thought they had JDM performance pegged, Toyota unleashed a rear-drive legend that would rewrite the rulebook for years to come. Number 8, 1983 Toyota Corolla 11 GT Apex. This is the one that launched 1,000 drifts. The 1983 Toyota Corolla 11 GT Apex, especially in Group A trim, wasn't just another boxy economy coupe. It was a raw, rev-hungry racer hiding in street clothes. And yes, this is the same AE86 platform that became a global icon. But before the tofu deliveries and anime fame, it was already a motorsport contender. The 11 GT Apex came with the now legendary 4AGE engine, a 1.6-liter double overhead cam four-cylinder, making around 130 horsepower. What made it special wasn't the numbers, it was the delivery. This engine loved to rev, and paired with a close ratio 5-speed and lightweight rear-wheel drive chassis, it made the 11 feel alive. The Group A trim turned it up a notch, with stiffer suspension, upgraded brakes, and stripped-back weight for racing homologation. In the corners, the AE86 came alive. It had balance, feedback, and control that rivaled more expensive sports cars. It didn't need big power to be fun. It needed a twisty road and a driver who knew how to use momentum. And that's what made it legendary. Not brute force, but pure connection. Visually, the 11 kept it low-key. Clean lines, a modest spoiler, and lightweight alloys were all you got. But that was the charm. It didn't need to scream. It let the driving do the talking. And in doing so, it cemented its place in motorsport history. As Toyota laid down the blueprint for grassroots racing greatness, the rest of Japan's automakers took notes, and the JDM street legal race car era truly began. But Mitsubishi, they didn't just take notes. They showed up with a prototype that looked ready to punch a hole through time. Number 7, 1985 Mitsubishi Starion, four-wheel drive turbo Showa prototype. Before Mitsubishi shocked rally fans with the Lancer Evolution, it tested something even more radical, a four-wheel drive turbocharged version of the Starion. Built as a prototype during the Showa era, the 1985 Starion four-wheel drive turbo was meant to go head-to-head with Group B monsters, but it never saw official competition, and that's part of what makes it so fascinating. Underneath the wide fenders was a turbocharged 2.0-liter Sirius engine mated to a bespoke four-wheel drive system. It had the bones of a rally car with massive power for its time and a layout meant to dominate dirt and tarmac. Mitsubishi engineers fine-tuned this machine with competition in mind. It wasn't just an experiment, it was a serious contender. Unfortunately, Group B ended before the project could make it to the world stage. Only a handful of test units were ever made. That's what makes the Starion four-wheel drive turbo such a unicorn today. You'll hear whispers about it in enthusiast circles, see grainy test footage, and maybe, if you're lucky, spot one at a vintage motorsport event. It's a reminder that Mitsubishi's motorsport vision was bigger than most people realize. While the production Starion was already impressive, this version was something else. It was rally DNA in a muscle coupe's body. By now, you've probably realized just how deep the JDM catalog goes. If you're into this kind of forgotten firepower, subscribing might just be the smartest thing you do today. As Mitsubishi quietly built a machine that could have changed history, Nissan was busy evolving its Skyline. The R31 RSX was about to introduce technologies that would lay the groundwork for a revolution in JDM performance. Number 6, 1987, Nissan Skyline RSX R31. By the late 1980s, Nissan was transitioning from analog muscle to digital precision, and the 1987 Skyline RSX R31 sat right in the middle of that shift. It wasn't as famous as the later R32 GTR, but the RSX offered a critical preview of what was coming, and it came loaded with innovations. Under the hood was the new RB20DET engine, a 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-six that would later become legendary. It produced around 190 horsepower, enough to make this rear-wheel drive sedan genuinely quick. But it wasn't just about the power. The RSX introduced the world to HICAS, Nissan's four-wheel steering system, marking a bold step into electronic handling tech. This Skyline was a bridge. It carried the blocky looks of the early 80s but started adding sophistication underneath. The suspension was tighter, the electronics more advanced, and the powertrain more refined. It gave drivers a sense of the future without letting go of raw driving fun. It was in many ways a testbed for the R32 that would soon rewrite the rulebook. Yet the RSX never got the spotlight. Overshadowed by its younger siblings, it quietly faded into history. But real fans know, it was the moment Nissan stopped building fast sedans and started engineering legends. And while Nissan looked forward, Honda was doing something smaller, sharper, and totally different. The next car wasn't built to dominate circuits. It was built to bring race feel to the streets. Number 5, 1968 Daihatsu Compagno, Berliner Rally 1000. This little box on wheels may not scream speed, but the 1968 Daihatsu Compagno Berliner Rally 1000 was no joke. It was one of Japan's earliest stabs at competitive rallying, and though it was small, it came to fight. Daihatsu took the humble Compagno sedan and gave it a serious motorsport makeover. Upgraded carburetors, improved suspension, and a lightweight build that made it dance on gravel. For a car that looked like a postman's daily driver, it had a shockingly competitive spirit. The 1-liter inline-four might not sound impressive, but paired with its low curb weight and close ratio gearbox, it gave drivers enough punch to stay in the action. Rally teams squeezed out everything they could, turning this compact commuter into a screamer that could hold its own against bigger rivals in its class. Plus, the engine's reliability made it ideal for the punishment of rally stages. Overheating wasn't an issue, and repairs were simple. What makes it so lovable is how unassuming it looks. Most people walked right past it in parking lots, never knowing it had dirt in its teeth and rally wins under its belt. It looked like it belonged in a grandma's garage, but take a closer look and you'd find flared fenders, reinforced struts, and tuned intakes. It didn't need decals to prove anything. It was a competitor first, a sedan second. And just when the Campagna Rally proved that Daihatsu could take the fight to the dirt, Toyota decided to one-up the street game with a coupe that took GT styling and raw aggression and packed it into a package you could actually buy at the dealer. Number 4, 1990 Toyota Celica GT4 ST165. If the Civic EF was precision, the Celica GT4 ST165 was power. This was Toyota's first real rally weapon, built to compete in the World Rally Championship. And even better, it was fully street legal. With a turbocharged 2.0-liter 3S GTE engine and all-wheel drive, the GT4 didn't just go fast. It clawed its way through dirt, snow, and anything else in its path. The ST165 wasn't light, but it was purposeful. Every element, from the functional hood scoop to the aggressive flares, was designed for rally stages. Under the skin, it shared a lot with its race counterpart. It had a close ratio gearbox, viscous center diff, and a motor that loved boost. On the street, it was surprisingly composed, comfortable enough for daily use, but when the turbo kicked in, it transformed. It wasn't flashy like an Evo or a WRX, but it laid the groundwork. This was the genesis of Toyota's WRC legacy. It gave birth to future GT4s and eventually the GR Yaris. The ST165 is often overshadowed by the ST185 and ST205. But without it, Toyota's rally journey might have never begun. And the fact that you could buy this road-going beast from a dealership, that's what made it magic. Still with us? You're one of the real ones. We're in the final stretch, and the last few picks are cult-worthy. If you haven't already, send this video to someone who lives for this stuff. If the Starion was a heavyweight slugger, this next car was a featherweight ninja. Tiny, bizarre, and absolutely unforgettable. Number 3, 1991. AutoZam AZ1 Mazda Speed version. If you ever wanted a race car that fits in your garage and your backpack, the AutoZam AZ1 might be your unicorn. Built under Mazda's AutoZam brand and tuned by Mazda Speed, this tiny K car defied all expectations. Mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, gull-wing doors. It looked like a scaled-down supercar from the future. And then you realize it was street legal and sold at actual dealerships in Japan. Under that tiny rear hatch sat a turbocharged 657 cubic centimeter engine. Doesn't sound like much? Sure, but in a car that weighed less than 1,600 pounds, it was pure fun. The Mazda Speed version added even more flair. Body kit, sportier suspension, and bold graphics that made it clear this wasn't your average shopping mall runabout. The handling was go-kart sharp, the turbo spooled quickly, and on tight roads, nothing could keep up unless it had wings or wore an NSX badge. But here's the thing, no one saw this coming. The AZ1 didn't look like a threat. It was cute. It was small. People assumed it was a toy. But it was a toy built with real engineering and real motorsport influence. It brought that rebellious 90s JDM energy in a form factor no one took seriously until they saw it in action. Today, the AZ1 is cult royalty. Clean ones are hard to find, and Mazda Speed versions are even rarer. They were never produced in large numbers to begin with, and time hasn't exactly been kind to K-class cars with turbochargers and aggressive drivers. If you see one now, especially with the Mazda Speed badge, you're looking at something truly special. A track-capable sleeper disguised as a Hot Wheels model. Just when you think Japan's turbocharged surprises can't get any wilder, Nissan went and stuffed rally DNA into a humble hatchback. And the result was anything but polite. Number 2, 1993 Nissan Pulsar NX GTIR SR20 DET. At a glance, the 1993 Pulsar NX GTIR looked like your everyday hatchback. Rounded edges, compact stance, 3 doors, and just enough rear spoiler to make you wonder if someone got carried away at the dealership. But lift the hood and all your assumptions went out the window. Because tucked inside was the legendary SR20D ET engine, turbocharged, intercooled, and ready for war. This wasn't just a street car. It was built to homologate Nissan's rally ambitions. And it came with full-time all-wheel drive, a 5-speed manual, and rally-bred suspension. Power? Around 227 horses, more than enough to turn this little hatch into a corner assassin. Weighing under 2,700 pounds, its power-to-weight ratio embarrassed rivals. On tight roads, the GTIR was brutal. Turbo lag gave way to neck-snapping boost, and the AWD grip made it feel glued to the tarmac. It didn't glide, it clawed. Drivers loved how raw it felt, how each shift begged for more aggression. No fluff, just you, boost, and a chassis that didn't flinch. Still, people slept on it. The Pulsar's friendly, rounded shell made it invisible in traffic. Nobody expected it to gap bigger coupes. Fewer knew it was Japan's answer to the Lancia Delta Integral and Escort Cosworth. Today, it remains one of the most underrated turbo hatches ever made. If the Pulsar was a rally weapon in disguise, Mitsubishi was readying a stripped-down Evo that only cared about exits, not excuses. Number 1, 1995 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 3RS. If the regular Evo 3 was a street-legal rally car, the RS version was a cage fighter that skipped media training. No power windows, no ABS, no rear wiper. Just boost, grip, and attitude. Mitsubishi built the Lancer Evolution 3RS for one purpose: win. And it did that by shedding weight, sharpening the suspension, and dialing up the aggression on an already ferocious platform. At the heart was the same 4G63T turbocharged inline-4, good for around 270 horsepower in JDM spec. But it wasn't just about numbers, it was how the RS delivered them. The power band hit hard and didn't taper off. Paired with a close ratio 5-speed manual and full-time all-wheel drive, it launched like a missile and devoured corners without asking for forgiveness. The steering was unassisted and raw. The clutch was heavy. The ride was stiff. But for people who wanted to feel every crack in the pavement and every ounce of feedback from the tires, it was perfect. What made the RS even more unique was how much it didn't care about appearances. No flashy trim, no fancy decals. In fact, most came in plain white. It was a ghost car, a factory-built weapon with nothing extra to distract you. That's what made it so respected among hardcore drivers and tuners. You could take it straight to a rally stage or tweak it for the track, and it would just keep going. Mitsubishi's RS trim was a nod to purists, the kind of people who'd rather have a seam-welded chassis than a CD player. And the Evo 3RS delivered. It was one of the last Evos before the cars got heavier, fancier, and more comfortable. This one was built when Mitsubishi still thought racing came first, and everything else could wait. That's it. 15 forgotten machines that proved Japan never played fair. If you felt even one of these cars deserved more love, hit like, subscribe, and tell us your favorite in the comments. More hidden legends coming soon. Stay tuned.